You're watching or listening to the Blainsworld podcast, and we can be found each week on Facebook. We can also be found elsewhere. I'm just trying to look my ass to unmute. We can be found on LinkedIn, YouTube, also Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You look for us and you can find us. And perfect timing, there's my good friend, Stephen Schulman. And Stephen, you can wave to all your friends and friends who are watching this. So can you hear us? That's Stephen. Okay. And I should mention that Stephen's been a longtime friend of mine, and he's quite a friend, quite a character, as you'll see. I should mention to you that Stephen was born in Los Angeles and grew up in Miami, Florida. That's where you are now. Is that correct, Steve? Stephen?
Miami, yeah.
Okay. He was known as orphan at age 17. It resulted in a life filled with darkness of drugs, sex, and rock and roll, some combination. Fortunately, at age 35, after cheating death 4 times, Steve was able to get clean and sober. Is happy and proud that he's continued his positive path. As he says, I love this line, Stephen. I went from the outhouse to the penthouse. He has many accomplishments, but one in particular is very close to his heart. He founded Animal Care Now 6 years ago, a nonprofit charity devoted to saving lives of injured and abandoned animals. And Stephen, the thing that always amazes me about you is kind of like all these various lifetimes you've led. As a kid, did you know what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Did I know what I wanted to be when I was a kid? I didn't even know I was ever a kid. I don't remember my life as a kid until probably I was 17, because it was so filled with drugs, and when it wasn't, I blocked it out because of having, no structure, no parents, and nothing to look forward to.
Wait, hold that thought, because off the air, I want to talk to you a little bit further about that, because I have somewhat a similar experience, but not because of drugs, but it's just, I know very little of my life, or remember very little of my life until maybe I was about 15. I can never understand that. So as a child, you don't remember much of your childhood. Even like, do you have pictures of you as a kid? Do you ever look at pictures as a kid?
I have a few pictures of me as a kid, but they were in Los Angeles where I was born. And then, when I came here, I believe I came to Miami Beach when I was 5 to live with my grandparents in their house. And oh, by the way, I do remember something. I remember shining the balls of golfer balls, the white balls. And,
Thanks for the clarification. Yeah.
Yeah. When I lived on a golf course in my grandparents' house, and in order to make some money, when the golfers, the balls went wide, I would, gather them up, wash them off, and give them back to them for like a quarter or something.
Were you?
If they didn't pay, I wouldn't give it to them.
As a kid, were you ever a caddy?
No.
No, never caddy.
But I did have a set of golf clubs donated to me, and I'm left-handed, so of course they were right-handed, and I had to learn to play golf right-handed. One of the 2 things I do right-handed, and I got pretty good at playing golf.
Do you still play golf?
Nah.
No.
It's boring.
So talk a little bit about, Stephen, about your past, and we'll talk about kind of the good and the bad. You eventually became an insurance agent. What got you to become an insurance agent?
I was working for this company called ABC Communications, and all in Miami. And they were the first company in the state of Florida to offer cellular phones. So you're going back to 1988. And I was working there as a credit manager. And then this woman gets hired at the company as a sales manager. And she recognized something in me that I didn't know I had. And as she said, it was charm, personality, your upbeat, attitude. And then she said to me, "You're wasting your time here. If you want to do anything with your life, you need to get out of here and follow me, and I'll guide you in the right career path." And of course, my mind thought, well, oh, this is great. I was having an older woman, hit on me and I was going to be a kept man. It didn't work out that way, but she was her son was a big time insurance financial planning executive, and she had a very big insurance practice, and she taught me how to sell. And in the business of sales, strictly commission, and you use your charm, your personality, and your knowledge, and people will trust you, and people will go with you and buy from you. A lot of times they'll buy from you without even asking you what they're buying. And I found out that I had the gift of gab. So that's how I left there. And I started in insurance. First I crawled, then I walked, then I ran, then I got more and more knowledgeable of the industry. And, I was able to refine my ideas and help people. And I was helping people provide for them, which they didn't know that they needed, protection for financial freedom for their future.
In that part of your life, were you also doing drugs?
No,
Or
I was doing drugs. I was hardcore drug addict till September 24th, 1987. That was 22 years of hardcore drugs, sex, drugs, rock and roll. Then I went into treatment.
And talk a little bit about that story, because again, when I read about it, I was just amazed about it in terms of it actually not only took you to all the things you mentioned, you wound up in prison too at one point in time. Is that correct?
Yes. One of the joys of being a drug addict, that wasn't anything I did. It was the fact that, my drug of choice was a drug in the 70s called Quaaludes.
Right.
Probably the most popular drug in the world, and a great drug, but it was an abused drug. And basically what happened, I needed to make money because I didn't have any money. I was paycheck to paycheck. So I started selling Quaaludes, and thousands at a time. And then one day I got a phone call from one of my buyers in St. Augustine. And he said, why don't you come up to St. Augustine for the weekend? I can't come down. You come up. I'll show you the oldest city in the country. I'll be a tour guide for you. And you can bring up the Quaaludes, blah, 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 blah. And anyway, it sounded good. I told my wife. She said, I want to go. No, you can't. Just in case something happens to me, I need you back in Miami. So I went up, and I had 10,000 Quaaludes at the time. And it was a setup with the St. Johns County Sheriff's Department. He had gotten busted for trafficking about less than a month, him and his wife. And in order for him to get a reduced sentence and his wife to get immunity, they had to turn in their dealer. So they set me up, and, they told the sheriff's office about me. And the long and the short of it was, when I went to trial, this is a real redneck county, St. Johns County, back in, I think it was 1980. And what's a white boy, Jewish, bringing up these pills and polluting us rednecks and, not hippies, country boys with all these pills. So basically I ended up facing 30 years in prison for trafficking, and I got a lesser charge, convicted of possession. And that was 5 years in prison, 5 years on parole, of which I did 2 years in prison, 2 years on parole. And then I got out, and then my whole life started all over again. Almost then. I still didn't learn my lesson with drugs.
How'd you get off drugs?
Because in 1987, I was emaciated because my drug the last 2.5 years of my existence was crack. Crack cocaine is insidious. And I spent my entire 2.5 years up until September of 87 addicted to it. I didn't sleep. All I did was think about it, try to find it, try to scrape the carpet looking for it. And I was emaciated. And then one day, my uncle, I called Uncle, wasn't Uncle Glory at the time, it was Uncle Butch. Him and my sister came in, busted in my door at my house, and said, you're sick, and we're either going to put you Baker Acted, which is an involuntary confinement for the purpose of saving your life from destruction, or we're going to commit you to a mental institution unless you quit. And I thought there was nothing wrong with me. I thought I looked good, flat stomach, no, looked good and everything. Anyway, they gave me an ultimatum. They said, we're either going to commit you and Baker Act you, or you go in voluntarily. So I ended up, finding a place, took my insurance, and I went into the treatment center. But in my mind, I was going in for 30 days,
Right.
treatment center, and my goal was to eat as much as I could, gain as much weight as I could, so I could come out and be a functioning weekend crackhead. And I gained the weight back, but what happened was when I got clean, my entire mind, my body, my mind, my thinking, everything changed. Like I said, I went from the outhouse of life to the penthouse of prosperity, and it started when I got clean those 30 days. And then from there, I went to meetings every day, AA, NA meetings every day, didn't question the reason why, just did it, followed those suggestions. And my house that I had with my wife in Miami Beach, I just claimed it over to her, walked out, gave it to her. The only thing I took was my little Maltese poodle, and I rented a real tiny efficiency that was, maybe 400 square feet. And that's where I lived for like the first year of recovery. And that's when I found this couple jobs, menial jobs. And then I found this job, as a credit manager, and I thought I was a big shot because I got respect and everything. But I realized one thing: I was smart, I was intuitive, I was a quick learner. And all these years that I was just so messed up, I'm getting high. The purpose of getting high was to avoid the pain of, being alone, being self-pity, and all the other drama that goes with, people doing drugs. And that's when my life started. And then the woman who introduced me to insurance was another woman who I write in my book, and I give a lot of praise to and thanks, because she came into my life and talked me into being what I didn't know I could be. And she was right. And that's where it skyrocketed.
By the way, I should have asked you, so you don't have to dig it up, but I did see that picture of you when you were, at the low of whatever you were at, and your weight, and
On the beach,
yeah,
my
you showed me.
Speedos,
Yeah, how much did you weigh then?
I was about 6'2" and 110 pounds.
Wow, and you
That
thought
was
you
a picture in my book. I don't know if it's a
right.
color picture or not, but that's a picture of me on Miami Beach, and sunning my beautiful body, and my wife laying next to me. And I think what we're doing is we're crashing from being up for days, and that was what I looked like.
And you
Those are
thought
few more pictures.
but you thought you looked good though, right?
I thought it looked great. I mean, flat stomach, a 12-pack. My 12-pack was ribs.
Yeah, exactly.
It was all ribs.
Well,
yeah.
Stephen, I think your story becomes even more amazing when you think about it. And I'll just jump in with part of the thing that I think so impressed me with you was the fact that you then eventually got off the drugs. You then eventually were selling insurance. And I was so impressed with the fact, some of the things you did selling insurance, but especially I think most was the fact that you actually got back the right to vote. And why don't you just talk a little bit about that? Because that so impressed me when you told that story. Here you were convicted, you had a conviction, and at the time, convicted folks weren't allowed to vote. Is that correct?
Correct. Still is.
Yeah.
Regardless of what you hear, Florida is a real messed up state. Let's just politically wise. I don't know if you can use profanity, but basically, yeah. Rick Scott, our former governor, and should be locked up in prison for 200 years for his dirty deeds. And then, of course, our current governor, DeSantis. But that being said, yes, what happened was when I got out of prison, I was a convicted felon. And I realized that in order to be something, or to do something, I had to change everything. And how do I change it? By perseverance. So what I did was I found the rules. I got a copy. I got a form from the governor's office. You know, restoration of civil rights. What do you got to do? And I filled it out. I got my letters of recommendation. Followed everything, and pretty much it was easy. It was no mystery why you couldn't do it. You know, I fulfilled all the requirements. I was off parole. I was a functioning member of society with a job, and they gave me my right to vote. They gave me my right to vote. They gave me my right to do everything that a regular person can do, a non-felon, except the right to bear arms. That's a specialized request. And living in Miami, I don't want my rights. I don't want to have the legal right to have a firearm. It's better for me not to have it. And it's been really good. So I got my rights. I was able to vote. I voted, whole public office, you know, everything.
Because even that, I was so impressed when you told me you're going through the process. You can say it's a process, but it took you a while. And it wasn't, I mean, that you did it was something. But for a lot of people, it's very difficult, especially talk a little bit about the process that even to get the right back to vote, you have to pay all sorts of fees or restitution to even
well, that never happened with me. I mean, I had $5,000 fine.
Right.
And this is going back, let's see. I got out of prison in 1980, I think in 1984 or 1985. And then I got my rights to vote in the mid-80s. And I had a $5,000 fine, and I had to pay it off because I owed the government. I didn't want to have any handcuffs on me. I did my time. You know, I got out, you know, prison. Fortunately, in prison, I didn't have any issues with rape, sodomy, molestation, any of that, which is a whole nother thing. You know, that's a whole nother world I learned to be able to manipulate and adapt to. But the money aspect of the fines wasn't a problem. I paid it. I mean, I obviously had to work and pay it off, and that was it. What they're doing now is some kind of manipulative political process to keep people that are convicted felons from voting. And without getting political, it's because if you keep the inmates as inmates and you keep them from voting, you basically purge the voter rolls in favor of Republicans, because inmates generally vote Democrat. So by the inmates not being able to get on, or not, you know, or not being able to get their rights back, they can't vote. It's the way of manipulating the voter rolls that, you know, favor Republicans and not Democrats. And that's a whole nother issue that I can talk about. Matter of fact, there's a PSA that I wrote. I mean, I videotaped. It's on my website. And I blast Rick Scott as one of the most devious, corrupt pieces of garbage that's in government for starting this whole thing. Because
let me stop you a second, Stephen. Yeah. Can you tell me how you really feel about the guy? No,
I can feel that the guy bought himself, yeah, with his corruption and his bilking of the Medicare system. He is the biggest Medicare fraudster ever. And he bought his way out, and that's how he was able to get where he is. And he's the one that started this with inmates not to vote.
Stephen, let me jump in because you alluded to it already. So in terms of some of the stuff we're talking about, you mentioned a website. Can you give the website?
Pardon me?
Can you give your website?
The website is www.myunclegloria.com.
Okay, and if they go there, I'll just repeat that once again,
www.myunclegloria.com.
Now, we're going to encourage folks to check out the website for lots of reasons, but one of the first things that I'll ask you, because it's a perfect segue into what I'm going to ask you, that's kind of an unusual name for a website when you think about it. You know, myunclegloria.com. How come it's not Simon Schulman or whatever? What's the story behind My Uncle Gloria?
Well, as I mentioned to you, my uncle and my sister, my uncle Butch was his name, Butch, was my mother's brother, and my sister. And the two of them conspired to get me into a treatment center or get me into a mental institution. And my uncle, I hated him. I hated him and wanted him to die for so many years because he was the only male role model that I had in my life. I never knew my father, never knew. I didn't even know I had a father. And I asked him to please help me and guide me. And he was never there, basically abandoned me, rejected me. So I hated him. And he comes along in my life and tries to be a hero by saving me from dying of drugs. But he really didn't do it. All he was there for was to assist my sister to get me into rehab. Anyway, so I never really liked him, and he was just out of my life forever. And then one day, this is after I'm clean, and my life is going good. I think it was 1997, 1998. My life is good. I have a career. I have a wonderful woman in my life. God has been good. I have everything imaginable. My recovery is perfect. And I get a phone call from my sister out of the blue telling me that our uncle is dead. And I was like ecstatic. I said, great, he's dead. When's the reading of the will? Maybe the bastard will have left me his classic car collection, because he owned auto junkyards and he was the king of auto junkyards in South Florida. And I thought he had all these beautiful classic cars, and I thought he would leave them to me as a gesture of redemption. And she said, no, he didn't leave you anything. And no, he's not dead. And I didn't understand it. And then when I tried to talk to her, and at the same time, I was on my way out for a date with my beautiful girlfriend, and my mind was on her, not on my uncle. She tried to explain it to me, and I just said, forget it. And that's when the whole issue of my Uncle Gloria started. The seed was planted. She said, no, you need to come over and I need to tell you what happened to Uncle Butch. He's not dead metaphorically, but we have an Aunt Gloria. And I had no idea what she was talking about. Couldn't put it together. And that's basically the beginning.
So you discovered then how many years ago was that again?
Excuse me?
How many years ago was that?
I would say probably 1998, 1997, 1999.
So all of a sudden in the late 1990s, you discover that your Butch was no longer Butch, but he became, I guess, Gloria. Is that by choice?
Yeah, his choice completely.
So what was your reaction to that when you found out?
Well, once I realized that it wasn't a joke, I was disgusted. I was repulsed. I was just, I like, just imagine if you woke up one day, this is what happened, reality. You woke up one day and said to me, hey, Stephen, you know what? I love women so much that I think I'm going to become a woman. So I'm going to go out today and I'm going to get my penis cut off, my balls cut off, and I'm going to become a full-time woman. And this was a masculine heterosexual man.
And this was also when nobody was doing that. This is
nobody. Very,
right.
very rare
Right.
people around the world. It was not an everyday occurrence, like especially at age 66.
Right.
He was 66 years old.
So,
and so
what
I did was, when I realized this, then I had to make a decision, because my sister wanted me to meet Gloria. That was the name she chose as a woman, because she loved Gloria Stefan. and all these different Glorias. And I had no interest in seeing her. I was disgusted, repulsed. I just wanted to remember my uncle as the bastard he was, not as a woman, and let it just maybe this image will die and it'll go on. But at the time, the woman that I was dating, she kept prodding me to go. So the deal was my sister arranged, well, my Gloria arranged for me, begged my sister to tell me to come meet her at a church. And I thought, wait, a church? So not only did she have a sex change, but she had a religion change. Now she's Jewish. Now she's not Jewish. She's, Christian, Catholic. And no. It's where they held 12-step meetings.
Okay.
She was facilitating a meeting for helping other people who had sexual identity disorders, because Gloria was this macho person, or butch, who always wanted to run the show, kind of like me in a way. So unfortunately, I didn't want to go. And then my friend Valerie, back in the late 90s, she agreed to go with me. She said, I'll hold your hand and I'll be there as your support. And, you need to reconnect with family because you have very few family members. And she gave me the Jewish guilt about, life is short and don't judge until don't judge by what you don't know. And plus she has six sisters, so she knows about craziness. And I didn't want to go. And finally, my sister, who just can nag me shit out of me continually, she says, you got to go. You got to meet Gloria. So finally, my curiosity got to me. And that's when a light bulb went off in my head. In my mind, I figured, well, maybe I can make this an entrepreneurial business venture. In the event that things go good, I might want to write a book about her, him, put it in the biography section of Barnes and Nobles, make $1 million in sales, and that would be my way of getting money from my uncle that he never gave us as children, which we deserved, which would have made our lives better.
Talk a little bit about that, Stephen, because again, I think that's kind of maybe when I first met you. We'd become friends. Yeah. And then you were telling me you were working on this writing project, but that was like about 10 years later, right? You didn't begin it. You may have begun it in the late 90s, but I met you, I guess, around
the early 2000s.
Yeah, something around then. And, you told me you were then starting to write this book. How was that project for you in that you had never written before? Is that correct?
No, nothing.
So what was it like writing a book?
I didn't have any idea how to do it. But what I did was I figured, well, common sense. Why don't first thing I did was, once I met Gloria, and once I went to the church and I did meet her that night. And that's a whole nother scene about what happened that's in the book. It's kind of a good story, but at the time it wasn't. And so once I met her, she invited us to have like snacks or whatever with her friends. And I started listening to her talk with her transgender friends. And then I started feeling a little easy. And I was saying, okay. And Valerie was there and she was tampering down my anxiety. And so I went, I did it. I met some people and I said, thank you very much. We'll get together. Never wanted to call her again. And then something in my head said, well, wait a second, here's an opportunity to, and I hate to say it, but to make money. And I said, well, write the book. How do I write the book? I don't know. But the first thing I got to do is ask Gloria or Butch, is it okay? And if she says yes, then that's the first step. So I basically took the first step by going and meeting with her, sitting down with her, and face to face. And this was the hardest thing of the entire process in the 20-some years, was having to sit down with her face to face. Because she asked one thing, she said, I'll give you everything. I'll sign over the rights to my life story. I'll give you a contract. You have 100% rights to do whatever you want. Tell my story. I don't want anything except one thing. And she says, I want to know why you hate me so much. Why have you hated me and wished I died? I don't know what I did to you. And that was hard as hell to sit in front of somebody. We were sitting on a sofa facing one another. And I remember that tears were going down my face because I was confronting the man I hated the most, the man who I blamed for my life's everything bad I did, for the drug use, for, everything that I did bad. He could have been there to help me and guide me as a role model, and he wasn't, and I hated him, and I'm confronting him. And how do I confront him, and tell him? But I did, and I was crying mercilessly. And then I asked him like 2-3 questions, which is all I wanted to know. And every question I asked him, he had a very logical, simple explanation. And I said, oh, is that it? He says, yeah. And I said, so if I would have asked you this question 20, 30 years ago, I would have avoided all this heartache, all this aggravation, all this drug addiction, all the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and had a good life, had a relationship with you. But because I didn't bother to find out and I assumed. And he says, yes, Stephen, you assume. And when you assume, you know what that means. I said, yes. And that was it. So we hugged, we cried, and then we started the journey. And then I started interviewing her. I took audio tapes, and I spent hours and hours going over her life as Butch, as Gloria. Why did she do it? Why did she want to do it? Why, what was the thing? And I had all these audio tapes. And then I started playing them back and listening. And then I sort of kind of cherry picked certain words and certain thoughts, kind of wrote it down on a piece of paper, sort of an outline. And then that's how little by little, I put it together.
How long did the book take you to write, to finish?
It would have taken me about a year or two, but I kept putting it down because it wasn't a priority. And I had a very big insurance practice, a very big one. I was doing very well financially. And that was a luxury. So I'd say 10, 15 years.
Do you have the book? Do you have the book in front? Do you have the book handy? I should have brought up my copy.
Yeah.
Okay, great. But just hold it up a little higher so you can see the title. But great title. I love it. My Uncle Gloria. Just when I heard the title, and what I'd say, a memoir underneath it. Great title. And is that Gloria? That's Gloria on the cover?
Huh?
That's Gloria on the cover?
Yes.
Yeah.
Half of her.
Okay.
Blended in with the other half. No, half is Butch, half is Gloria.
Yeah, great cover. Okay, you can put it down now. But I'll just mention to anybody listening or watching this, if you want to read an amazing story, Stephen Schulman's story, read this, My Uncle Gloria. Remember, Stephen, how you first told me, you kind of gave me a heads up on it. I forgot what you said. It said very gritty, and it said it's not a...
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very gritty. It's extremely graphic. It's salacious, because what I did was I told a lot about me. I told a lot about, in graphic detail, about what it's like to be a drug addict. From putting the needle in your arm, preparing the needle, shooting up the cocaine, over and over, chasing, going in the bushes and the streets, looking for drugs, trying to pick things up out of the gutter. And then I have a whole section about what it's like with the sex, with the women. And this is all Miami Beach. So it's the prostitutes and the hookers. And you're trying to chase that high, which you never get. I mean, I can't explain it, but that's the thing about addiction. The first time you take that hit is the best, or the puff is the best. And you spend the rest of your life trying to get that pot. And so with women, I would do the same thing, and I would forever try to get my my I don't know to say, get off on the women, and it never worked. And on and on and on. So it was the sex, the drugs, and then I was a musician, and I became a terrible drummer. I used to be a good drummer, and I could not coordinate because with the Quaaludes and with cocaine, my hands would freeze. I couldn't play, and I was a mess. But I thought I was perfect. So I go into the graphicness of what I did, how I did it. And some very famous people came into my life and some very famous locations, one being Star Island, which is one of the wealthiest areas of Miami Beach, private residential island. So there was that. And then I'm thinking about the times when Gloria told me about her life and the things she did, what she had to do in order to make herself feel like a woman because she had no money, and the things she did, ripping off people, just a lot of bad things. Nothing that was, that would put you in prison or anything, just a lot of bad things to yourself. And then of course the emotional issues of what you're doing, and you don't know what you're doing until your mind gets clean, and then you just can't believe you're doing what you're doing. And but yeah, it's pretty. And then of course then comes along the people that want to steal the story. Then comes along the Hollywood A-listers, the producers, the directors. They love the story, they love the idea, they wanted to buy it, they want to make a movie, TV series, the whole thing. And you might remember about the movie that was made, the documentary film, and the producer that came into my life and flashing her Emmy Awards and saying, look, if you just sign over the rights to me, I can make her a celebrity. And that's when the greed, and that's when the Hollywood slime, at the worst got to me, because everybody wanted to own the story because it's fresh.
By the way,
So
Stephen,
a lot of things.
I should mention two things. One is, so folks want to get a hold of this book, first of all, and I recommend it strongly. My Uncle Gloria. Best bet to get a copy is what?
Amazon. You can go to my website and you can click on it, and you can, pay, I don't think it's $20. And then, it comes to me, and then I can mail it out to you. Mail it out in a nice pink envelope for you. I'll sign it if you want,
Autograph copy.
You can go to Amazon. You can go to the various Amazons for the what do you call it? The audio. Oh, by the way, there's an audio book that I'm uploading. Should be ready to listen to it the next week or so. But there's a Kindle version available too.
Very cool. And audio book we should mention is the narration is by a good friend of ours, Tom Gallagher, I understand, did the narration.
Yes.
Okay.
Did a phenomenal job, Tom Gallagher.
So you have a couple of different options Stephen has mentioned. You can audio, Kindle, you can buy the book itself. You're in for a treat. And let's talk a little bit about two other things, Stephen, you're involved in. And I can't believe all the different things you're involved in. But another thing that impressed me with Stephen Schulman is that in the middle of kind of all this, you started sort of a nonprofit organization. And talk a little bit about that.
Well, the one thing I realized about life is that once I got clean, that the people I identify the most with, have the most compassion with, are four-legged people, dogs. And I still do. I love them. I do anything I can. I raise money. I donate money. I help injured and sick animals in any way I can. So I started thinking in my entrepreneurial mind, well, let me start a charity, but something different. Not, I'm going to have an sanctuary or a kennel and store dogs, none of that stuff. So I came up with a novel idea. It's basically, I created a virtual bank of money, and it's very simple. I take money in, people donate to me. I'm a nonprofit, and I'm able to take unlimited funds now because I'm more than 6 years in business. So you can get your tax write-off by donating it to me. And then what we do is we hold the money, and then we solicit people who who need help. Injured animals, sick animals. We help with natural disasters or where money is needed to make things happen to save animals' lives. Regardless of where it is, we're there. All they got to do is prove to us that it's legitimate. And we have a very strict like underwriting policy of, you know, wanting money. We'll either grant you, we'll loan you, or we'll give you money, you know, whether it's for vet bills, transportation, whatever, to get the animals, you know, help, basically to help injured and sick animals in distress. So the reality is we don't have an overhead. We're a bank. We take money in and we give it out. The good thing, the one other good thing that I want to share with whomever's listening for the future is that if people want to see where their money goes, they can see our bank account through a read only. In other words, we will give access to our bank
Very
account
cool.
to donors. So there's total transparency. That's it.
Stephen, talk again. The name of this nonprofit is what?
It's animalcarenow.org.
Okay, and so folks want to find out more about some of the work you do in the nonprofit sector. Again, once again, the website is
www.animalcarenow.
okay. And if
To be a little, but just be aware that the website, we're updating it. It's a little archaic because I don't have tech skills.
Okay.
So we're updating it. But you'll get the idea of what we do.
And if we talk about one other thing, Stephen, that you do also is that in addition to this tremendous story, the book, the nonprofit, you now, which I give you a lot of credit for, are starting to tell your story to other people. In other words, it's such a fascinating story. And I know you're starting to do more and more of this. Talk a little bit about what you do in terms of sharing your story with others.
Well, one of the things that I heard very early on in recovery is a saying that says you can't keep what you have unless you give it away. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but basically, I've been through hell and back and I've survived. And I'm a damn good speaker. I'm a I'm bragging. I'm a great speaker, motivated, powerful speaker. And I learned those skills just by life. I did it in prison. That's how I kept my safety. Plus, I'm a natural born like a barrister or an attorney, you know, an arguer, and I'm good at it. And I have this ability to impact people's lives in a way to help them understand that you don't have to do and go what I did, do what I did in order to get where I am. You know, you don't have to go through all this drama, all this chaos. I didn't have a father. Okay, life goes on, you know, and I can help people. I can talk to people. And I remember during my recovery, I used to be at a thing called Red Ribbon Week across the country. And it was a national event once a year. People would go to all the schools and talk to the kids about the dangers of drug abuse and what can happen and why we do it. And, you know, and my ex-wife and I, we used to talk to them. We used to go out and talk to them. It was a lot of fun. And they always come up to you and ask you questions, and it was engaging. And it was then I would go back to prisons and jails and institutions and talk to these people that are in prison that think they know everything, you know. And a lot of them would
sort of
say,
like
well,
sort of like you many years ago, where you thought you knew everything.
in a way, yeah. But these are guys that, you know, are a lot bigger than me, and they think they know everything. You know, it could be black, white, gay, straight, whatever. But the one thing I did notice is when I walk in and I look nice, I'm not in a suit, but I'm clean cut and everything. One of the first things they say, you hear them rumbling, is, "Oh, what is this bastard or this honky going to tell me? I don't know. Look at him. He's clean cut. What is he going to tell me that I don't know? You know, did he ever suffer? Did he ever have to live on the streets?" Read the book and you'll see what I went through. And so I tell them pretty quickly. And what I'm able to do is I'm able to lower myself to their level at the beginning to get their respect. And once I've got their respect and their attention, then I bring them up and then I start telling them about, we do recover. We don't have to live like this unless you want to live like this. And there's always a second chance. You know, I got a second chance and I made the most out of it. And I start telling them the things I did. You know, I became a big, I won't say a big shot, but a big time real estate investor, as you know, from my real estate Nashville, and between the insurance, you know, and the real estate, and then my book, you know, pretty busy. COVID killed everything, but point is that's what I like to do. And I want to do that for the rest of my life, is go around and inspiring people that you do recover and you can get better and life is good if you want it.
And Stephen, to recap, let me just try to bring everything back into focus. So if you want to find out more about my friends, and you said my Uncle Gloria, I'll say my friend Stephen. If you want to find out about Stephen Schulman, the best bet is, first of all, get the book. I'm telling you, you're going to be amazed by it. When you told me that first, you know, I knew you pretty well then, but I thought you were just, you know, full of it. You know, I said, this is a book you're going to read. And I'm telling you, good, exciting, really amazing book, My Uncle Gloria. Aside from that, Stephen Schulman, if they want to find out more about you, your background, how to get in touch with you, best bet is go to the website.
Excuse me?
Best bet to find out more about you, just go to the website.
myunclegloria.com.
And that has contact information, all that good stuff.
Yes, or you can contact me at Stephen at myunclegloria.com.
Okay.